You can have MPs get up in the House of Commons and give the most passionate, earnest, moving speeches imaginable, and it will have no effect. Look at the last budget debate. There were over 1,000 amendments moved against the budget, not a single one passed. And why would they have passed? Why would they be expected to pass? Harper has a dictatorial majority and is violating the authority of Parliament every day he sits in office.
Mm-hmm. There was a politician called Tommy Douglas. You probably remember him. And he said an anecdote about the mice, that every elections day they go and elect the cat as a representative. And I transposed that to thinking that all political parties are like the cats, and we the mice keep giving our power to these cats to make rules that benefit them, not us. Do you think that in Canada we could have a more direct democracy where we the citizens become the legislators, and instead of giving power to somebody else to legislate, we could legislate by referendum? A lot of it's done in Switzerland, for instance, where main legislation is treated by referendum, and the parliamentarians are there just to rubber stamp what the people want. Here is the other way around.
Yes, it
the
is.
Politicians make decisions, and we sometimes agree, sometimes don't agree.
But in Canada, that would not work. It would not work for two reasons. Canada is too big. Switzerland's a very small country and area. It's very condensed, very compact, and the Swiss have a long tradition of referendum and plebiscites and democratic government. The Helvetica Confederation survived for many years independent from the religious wars of Europe. It was dragged into some of them, but to a large extent because of the Alps, they retained their traditions better. Secondly, most Canadians do not want to be bothered with the affairs of state and couldn't care less. In the last election, I was appalled to find out that 50% of people surveyed in a CTV poll said they voted for a majority Harper government because they were tired of going to the polls to vote. So we have a country here of sheeple, not of citizens. And the people here would rather devolve their authority to other people to make decisions for them so they can get on with the so-called more important business of making money, enjoying life, and buying more creature comforts. Politically, we don't have the maturity or the interest to vote in referenda on all matters of public policy.
We just had a referenda on HST, and most people knew what they wanted, opposing what the government had done. Now,
But that's a different case. That's a very different example. It was a local one for BC only, and it was a single issue, and it was not something that was of pressing nature that required immediate action. But the way to get around this is not to devolve power to the masses, because not only do the masses not care enough, but the masses are too disorganized and easily manipulated by interest groups. It would be very easy for an interest group to get a hold of a certain society, of a group of people, to give them an idea and have them vote in a block. I mean, the idea of having an individual vote with his own conscience is a great idea, it's a wonderful notion, but it's almost an antiquated one. We have to evolve beyond democracy into some other form of government, which I don't quite know what that would be yet.
I hear you saying that the government is corrupt, that abuses power.
Yes.
But I also hear you saying that people are not ready for direct democracy. We are in a very bad shape then. We cannot trust the government, but we cannot trust ourselves either.
Well, direct democracy is only possible in small societies. It is not possible around a large country because the country is too wide, it has too many differences, there are too many fissures in this country. There's the West, there's English Canada and French Canada, there's urban, rural. It's far too heterogeneous to work as a direct democracy. Someplace like Singapore would work. Okay. Ancient Greece under the polis worked, but in Canada we have evolved to a point where it is no longer possible.
Think about BC,
Yeah.
BC only. Could
BC?
BC have direct democracy?
No,
It's still too big?
no. There is no possible way to have direct democracy because to have direct democracy, you need to have citizens. You need to have an intelligent, informed, well-educated electorate.
But we're not.
We are stupid and getting stupider every day, largely because of the internet, and we are force-fed information from a media that feeds us not news, but infotainment. If people want to make decisions or think they have the right to make decisions on foreign policy and have the government act on them, then they have to be able to show that they have the ability to formulate policy. There are too many differences of opinion throughout Canada to believe that there is any one Canadian mentality or consciousness that could act in behalf of the national interest.
No, I don't think we're ever going to have unanimity on anything, but we do have majority. So what I'm saying is that, for instance, in the war that we just finished in Afghanistan, and still some soldiers still left there, most people opposed. I think that if you make a poll about our relations with Israel, most people will oppose it.
That's right.
But the government is not doing what most people want.
But they don't have to.
So, but what I'm saying is that if we had a system of direct democracy where most people's decisions becomes the law because we become the legislators with some executive directors there in the ministries, then wouldn't that be a different world?
It's a completely fanciful world that would never happen because you would have to have the government willingly give up authority. You would have to have legislators saying, okay, we're not going to govern by parliamentary elections. We're going to be essentially a board of directors that's going to take direction from the public. It will never happen.
I heard a fellow from some institute in Boston, Massachusetts, Eugene somebody, and he advocates for a phantom government, that we should start building a phantom government with our own constitution, with our own rules. And when enough people, a significant number of us, belong to this group, then we can intellectually overthrow the government, not forcefully with machine guns, but through a legal system. We can tell them that they no longer represent us.
That would be it's an interesting notion. Perhaps in America that might work. In Canada it wouldn't work. Because for Canada to improve, we would have to overthrow the entire form of government we have, which is almost impervious to change, and start over.
Well, that's exactly what this fellow is saying. Building a new system rather than fighting the existing one.
Well, if you have a parallel government, in addition to the one that's in power, it's not clear how you would exercise authority. Because the government that's in power, the corrupt government, has control of the armed forces, it has control of the borders, it has control of the currency, it has, well, to some degree at least. So you don't seem to, you may have all the intellectual strength and the moral righteousness on your side, but if you don't have any way to impose that on the country, it's really not very much.
Yeah, I can see what you mean, but when you have the members, when enough people understand that new system, then that's what elects the politicians, right? So when we have enough people supporting this new system, then we will elect people that represent this new direct democracy type of government.
What we need to do is find a political system that is a bit different from what we have. What that is, I don't know. But expecting the masses to govern themselves is a waste of effort because the masses don't have the experience, the confidence, or the will to do what is necessary to govern society. Plato said about civic virtue. You needed civic virtue for people to care about public policy. You have people more interested in the leisure activities and luxuries. They became lazy. And this is how the democratic man in the Republic of Plato, how he showed how the democratic man devolves into the tyrant, how democracies devolve into tyranny. Because when the people no longer care about their society and to take responsibility for their actions, they look for someone to save them. They look for a champion to relieve them of the burden of thinking for themselves. And so this is what has happened in Canada to a very large degree. We are very close to showing that Plato was right. People don't want to vote. They don't want to think. They don't care. They've got their iPads, their iPods, their MP3 players, their PlayStations. That's what they're interested in. They don't want to worry about fiscal policy, monetary policy. The hard work of government is hard work. And we elect people who we think are good enough to do that hard work. And if people don't do that, they can't expect, they get the government they deserve, in the words of H.L. Mencken. And democracy is no longer feasible in a direct sense. And we have to get over the myth that the citizen of this country cares enough to do the right thing. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope there are enough citizens out there willing to demand that Governor General David Johnston dismiss Stephen Harper in the national interest. But to expect that the public is all of a sudden going to wake up and vote, hey, I can run my own country, I can be my own legislator, that is not possible anymore.
You think?
No, not possible.
You have no hope. Just ambition for a minute, that you said power corrupts, but that is exactly what we do every 4 years when we give our power to somebody else to represent us. Mm-hmm. So if we change that, then we're not empowering politicians, we're empowering ourselves. We become the legislators through referendum.
Yes, but you're missing the main point, is that you have no means to impose your referenda on the public.
Not until we are a significant number of people. Not if we're 10 or 20, but when we're 100,000, I think we can tell the government, because they won't be elected anymore.
No, you won't do it. You don't have the structure. You cannot do that under the current Canadian system. The government does not have to listen to it.
Tommy Douglas said we keep changing cats, from the black cat to the white cat to the spotted cat to the striped cat, and that's what we're doing with parties.
Yeah, he has a lot of these cat metaphors, doesn't he?
From the NDP to the Liberal to the Conservatives to the Reforms. But anyway, we have a lot of time already covered, and I think I'm as pessimistic about the Governor General firing Mr. Harper as you are. As pessimistic and having direct democracy.
The difference is
we're both wrong.
Well, the difference is that the Governor General can do it. The legislation's in place, and not the legislation. The official authority from the Crown is in place. It can be done. It can be done tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Direct democracy will not happen for generations, if ever. There's a difference in time.
We can start now. So your son will become the next representative without power. The power will be in the people, and the representatives would be only executive ministers.
That will never happen.
Do you see the same argument being carried out 100 years ago about women voting and about slaves and many other things that people thought, because of the culture of that time, that you could never change it? They did change.
They did change, but it's not the same argument, because women and slaves are not the majority. They were a select group of people who advocated for change. The people who brought about the vote for women were not all women, because a lot of women didn't want the vote. The suffragettes were a dedicated core of organizers, and they succeeded. With respect to the slave revolt, there was a lot of moral revulsion against the slave revolt.
Okay, well, I hope we're both wrong, that the Governor General of Canada can fire Mr. Harper.
Well, he can do it. There's no question. He can do it.
And I hope we get direct democracy one day, before I die.
I hope you live to be 510.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Pedro.